The bonfire crackled, spitting embers into the twilight like tiny middle fingers to the fading day. Karen's voice, shrill and venomous, sliced through the calm like a chainsaw through butter. "You kids think you can just party on my lake?" she bellowed, her chins wobbling as she planted herself like a human barricade between the shore and our little gathering. She was a mountain of indignation, her floral muumuu flapping in the breeze, her eyes narrowed into slits of pure, unfiltered disdain. We'd only wanted a quiet night, me, Jamal, Sarah, and a cooler of cheap beer to celebrate Jamal's new job. The lake, tucked away in a state park, was our spot, a place we'd come to since high school to escape the grind of our small town. But Karen, the self-appointed queen of this public land, had other plans. She'd stormed down from her lakeside cabin, phone already in hand, ready to rain hell on our vibe. "I'm calling the cops," she declared, jabbing a sausage-like finger at us. "This is a restricted area, and I know you don't have a permit." Her words hung heavy, but I felt a smirk tug at my lips. "Oh, Karen," I thought, "you have no idea what you're stepping into." The air was thick with tension as the sun dipped below the pines, casting long shadows across the water. Jamal, always the peacemaker, raised his hands. "Ma'am, we're just chilling. No need to escalate this." His voice was calm, but I could see the irritation in his clenched jaw. Sarah, perched on a cooler, rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd pop out. "Lady, it's a public lake," she snapped. "Go back to your porch and leave us alone." Karen's face turned beet red, her lips pursing like she'd sucked a lemon. "Public? Public?" she spat, as if the word itself was an insult. "I've lived here for 15 years, and I won't have hoodlums like you trashing my view." She waved her phone like a weapon, already dialing. "You'll see what happens when you mess with someone who knows the law." I leaned back against a tree, arms crossed, letting her rant. See, what Karen didn't know what she couldn't know was that I wasn't some random kid with a six-pack and a dream. I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and this little lake party, it was covered by a federal permit, signed by none other than the state's top environmental officer, Karen's so-called friend at the State House. I'd spent months securing it for a community cleanup event we'd paired with this celebration. The irony was delicious, and I was ready to serve it cold. Karen's tirade continued, her voice rising to a pitch that could shatter glass. "You think you're so smart, don't you? With your loud music and your litter." There was no music, and our trash was in a bag, but facts weren't exactly Karen's forte. She paced, her flip-flops slapping the dirt, her eyes darting between us like she was sizing up criminals. "The police will be here any minute, and you'll be sorry you ever set foot on this lake." Sarah snorted, brushing her braids over her shoulder. "Bet they'll love hearing you wasted their time," she muttered. Jamal shot her a reluctant poke the bear, but I could tell he was losing patience too. Karen's entitlement was a force of nature, a hurricane of self-righteousness that threatened to suck the joy out of our night. But I wasn't worried. I had an ace in my pocket, and Karen was about to choke on her own smugness. The distant wail of sirens cut through the air, and Karen's lips curled into a triumphant sneer. "Here they come," she crowed, pointing at us like a prosecutor in a bad courtroom drama. "You're done for." The red and blue lights flickered through the trees, and two officers stepped out of a patrol car, their faces tired but professional. Officer Daniels, a grizzled guy I'd met at a park meeting once, approached first. His partner, a younger woman named Officer Ruiz, hung back, scanning the scene. "Good evening, folks," Daniels said, his voice neutral. "We got a call about an unauthorized gathering. Care to explain?" Karen didn't give us a chance. She barreled forward, her voice dripping with faux concern. "These kids are trespassing. They're drinking, making noise, and ruining the lake. I demand you arrest them." She gestured wildly, her muumuu flapping like a flag of victory. Daniels raised an eyebrow, glancing at our setup. A small fire, a cooler, and three people who looked more annoyed than dangerous. I stepped forward, pulling the folded permit from my back pocket. "Officer, I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, keeping my tone even. "We're here legally. I've got a federal permit for this gathering, signed by Director Helen Voss of the State Environmental Agency. I handed him the paper, watching Karen's face as I did. Her smug grin faltered, just for a second, but it was enough to make my night. Daniels unfolded the document, his eyes scanning the official letterhead, the signatures, the stamps. Ruiz stepped closer, peering over his shoulder. "Looks legit," she murmured. Daniels nodded, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am, this permit checks out. They're allowed to be here." Karen's jaw dropped, her eyes bugging out like a cartoon villain. "That's impossible," she screeched. "I know Helen Voss personally. She'd never allow this kind of a riffraff to ruin my lake." Her voice cracked, and she snatched at the permit, but Daniels held it out of reach. "Ma'am, I suggest you calm down," he said, his tone firm now. "This is a federal document. If you have an issue, you can take it up with the agency. But these folks are within their rights." Karen's face twisted into a mask of fury. "This is outrageous," she screamed, stomping her foot. "I pay taxes. I've lived here for years. You can't let them get away with this." She turned to me, her eyes blazing. "You think you're so clever, don't you? I'll have your permit revoked. I'll call Helen myself." I couldn't help it, I laughed. "Go ahead, Karen. Call her. Tell her how you tried to shut down a community cleanup event because you didn't like our beer cans." I gestured to the trash bag, neatly tied and ready for pickup. "I'm sure she'll love hearing about it." Sarah chimed in, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yeah, Karen, tell her how you're protecting the lake by harassing people who are literally cleaning it up." Jamal stifled a chuckle, but his eyes were gleaming with amusement. Karen's face went from red to purple, her hands shaking as she clutched her phone. You little punks," she sputtered. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure of it." She stormed off toward her cabin, muttering about lawsuits and important connections, her flip-flops slapping the ground like gunshots. Daniel sighed, handing me back the permit. "Sorry about that," he said. "We get calls like this more than you'd think. You folks enjoy your night." Ruiz gave us a small nod, and the officers headed back to their car. As the patrol lights faded, Jamal let out a low whistle. "Man, that was intense. She really thought she had us." Sarah grinned, cracking open a beer. "To Karen's epic fail," she said, raising the can. We clinked our drinks, the tension melting into laughter as the fire crackled and the lake shimmered under the stars. But the story didn't end there. A week later, I got a call from my boss at Fish and Wildlife. Apparently, Karen had called Director Voss, ranting about delinquents and fake permits. What she didn't expect was Voss's response. Not only was our permit legit, but the agency was so impressed with our cleanup event that they were expanding our program. Karen's complaint, it turned out, had backfired spectacularly, drawn attention to our work, and now we had funding for 3 more lake projects. Word got around town fast. Karen's neighbors, who'd long grown tired of her busybody ways, started giving her the cold shoulder. Her important connections didn't seem so important anymore, and her cabin, once the hub of her self-proclaimed lake empire, became a lonely outpost. She'd tried to wield her privilege like a club, but all she'd done was swing at her own reputation. As for us, we kept coming back to the lake. Each time, we'd raise a can to Karen's meltdown, a reminder that sometimes the universe has a way of serving justice with a side of irony. The lake was ours not because we owned it, but because we respected it. And that, Karen would never understand. The end.